Hello, and welcome to Samuel's Fortress. I'm your host Kirill, and today we are going to be discussing the arrival of the Bulgars into the Balkans and the formation of the First Bulgarian Empire. Before I get into that, however, I do want to give you a little bit of background on who the Bulgars were. So the Bulgars were a semi-nomadic Turkic peoples from Central Asia. Basically, they come from the Eurasian steppe, around the region of modern-day Kazakhstan, and they are very similar to the other Turkic nomadic tribes from that region. Basically, they are nomadic warriors. Equestrian warriors. They fight on horseback. They live in these large tents called yurts. They worship the Turkic sky god of Tengri, and they live in a tribal structure. Actually, they're called clans. So the way a Bulgar clan is organized is they have a Khan at the top, that is the ruler, and then under the Khan there is a noble class, an aristocracy, referred to as the boyars. So the Bulgars are a composition of these different tribes and clans who actually managed to unify in the early 7th century, around the year 630, 635. These Bulgar clans unify under a single leader, that leader being Khan Kubrat of the Dulo clan, and they form a state known as Old Great Bulgaria. So Old Great Bulgaria is basically located in modern-day eastern Ukraine, Crimea, southwest Russia, the North Caucasus, basically around the Sea of Azov. These Bulgar tribes come together and form a unified state under a single ruler, again, that being Khan Kubrat. Khan Kubrat has 5 sons, and after Khan Kubrat's death in 642, very shortly after the formation of the state, the 5 brothers rule the state, Old Great Bulgaria, for a short period of time. Not long after Kubrat's death, the state actually ends up disintegrating due to invasion from the Khazars. The Khazars are another Turkic Central Asian group who move from Central Asia west into the territories of Old Great Bulgaria and conquer the Bulgars. They're simply stronger, more powerful than the Bulgars, and therefore manage to defeat them. Now, these 5 brothers, who are the sons of Khan Kubrat, scatter to different parts of Europe, basically, once they're conquered by the Khazars. So you have one brother who goes north. He actually goes into the Russian interior around the Volga River region, and those Bulgars are referred to today as the Volga Bulgars. 3 of the brothers move west into the Pannonian Plain around modern-day Hungary, and then the final brother, the 5th brother, Khan Asparuh, who is relevant to our discussion today, moves south along the Black Sea coast, across the Danube, and into the Balkans. Now, Khan Asparuh, he moves into the Balkans around the year 670, possibly to 680 in that decade. The dates aren't really too clear, but 670, 680, Khan Asparuh, again, who is the son of Khan Kubrat, invades the Balkans at the head of 10,000 Bulgar warriors on horseback. So a very formidable force. They move into this region and conquer a large portion of land around the region of Dobruja. Dobruja is basically southeast Romania, northeast Bulgaria, basically around the Danubian plain where the Danube River empties out into the Black Sea. That's the area of Dobruja, and that's where Khan Asparuh establishes his state. He forms a city called Pliska, which is located in modern-day northeast Bulgaria, and that will be the homeland of the new Bulgar state. Now, who lives in the territory at that time? Well, as we discussed in the previous couple videos, the Slavs live there. The Slavs managed to conquer large portions of the Balkans, including this region, and they are the inhabitants of that region at the time that Khan Asparuh comes in. So Khan Asparuh is essentially conquering these Slavic tribes, and he does so quite easily. Like I mentioned in the previous couple videos, the Slavs are a very disorganized group of tribes. They are infantry warriors. They fight on foot. They don't have very sophisticated military weapons or technology. So they're really no match for a unified force of 10,000 armored horseback warriors at the command of a single general, a single Khan. So basically the Slavic tribes are quickly conquered and put under Bulgar rule. Now, what is the relationship between these Slavs and the Bulgars? It's actually not too unpleasant. I mean, no one likes to be conquered, but the Slavs actually don't face a lot of brutality or hostility from the Bulgars. The Bulgars are outnumbered, even though they're more powerful, in a military sense, pound for pound, than the Slavs are. Again, they're about 10,000 warriors. The Slavs number hundreds of thousands of people in that region, so they are a minority. And what they do is they essentially rule, the Bulgar minority rules over the Slavic majority as a kind of an elite ruling class. So the Slavic tribes, essentially their day-to-day lifestyle goes pretty unchanged. They're still able to maintain their normal way of life. They still maintain their tribal structure. They still have Slavic chieftains. They still, maintain their language, custom, culture, religion, etc. The only thing that really changes now that they're under Bulgar rule is they have to pay tribute to the Bulgars, to the Khan. Basically, they have to pay taxes to the Bulgar state. And when called upon, they have to fight for the Bulgars. So when called upon, they join the Bulgar army as infantry, complementing the Bulgar cavalry. So that's kind of the basic relationship between the Slavs and the Bulgars. Although the Slavs are under Bulgar rule, day to day, their normal lifestyle goes pretty much unchanged. Now, what is the relationship between the Bulgars and the Byzantines? Well, I should say that previously the Bulgars and the Byzantines, those two groups had a very friendly relationship. When the Bulgars were in Old Great Bulgaria under Khan Kubrat, under the father, the Byzantines and the Bulgars had a pretty good relationship. They traded, they had military alliances, so they had a pretty good relationship. However, that was contingent upon the Bulgars staying north of the Danube. Now that the Bulgars under Khan Asparukh move south of the Danube, they are making incursions into territory that the Byzantines feel is legitimately theirs. Again, the Danube being the border, the northern border of the Byzantine Empire, and the Bulgars having breached that border and come into the Balkan region. The Byzantines view this as an invasion of their territory, and they respond accordingly. So, not short after Khan Asparukh comes down, conquers the Slavs, and forms the state, the Byzantines form an army and move north towards the Bulgar state in order to push the Bulgars back across the Danube. I should say they are not successful in doing that. A battle ensues as the Bulgars and the Byzantines clash, and the Bulgars are successful. Khan Asparukh is victorious, and his forces manage to defeat the Byzantine forces. The Byzantines are forced to sign a peace treaty with the Bulgars. That treaty recognizes the Bulgar state as a legitimate state in the Balkans. It recognizes Asparukh as the legitimate leader of that state, and it also calls for tribute to be paid from the Byzantines to the Bulgars. So at this point in time, in the early 680s, we see the legitimization of the Bulgar state and the formation of a Bulgar empire that has a Bulgar ruling class and a Slavic majority population. Now, even though an initial peace is reached between the Bulgars and the Byzantines, it doesn't last very long. I don't want this to get too complicated, but there are numerous times when peace treaties are reached, they're broken, and then there's subsequent hostilities, new peace agreements are reached, Occurs for many centuries. The Bulgars and the Byzantines actually have, I think, over the course of the next few centuries, 45 to 50 major battles between the two groups. So that is a large number of major battles between two states at this period of time in the early Middle Ages. So the relationship between the Bulgars and the Byzantines is extremely complex, and it changes all the time. So I don't want to really start getting into the minutia of that, but I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll give you an example of peaceful relationships and an example of hostile relationships between the Bulgars and the Byzantines. So an example of cooperation and friendly relations between the Bulgars and the Byzantines can be seen in the year 717, 718. What occurs during this time period? Well, the Arabs form they form their own empire, the Islamic Empire, and they start conquering large territories in the Middle East, in North Africa, in Anatolia, in Europe, under the Islamic flag, so to speak. So in this early 8th century period, we see massive expansions of the Islamic Empire, again, into North Africa. They actually managed to go up into Spain and try to conquer Western Europe, although they are stopped on that front by the French king Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours. They also try to invade Europe from the east. So they invade the Byzantine Empire, and in the year 717, the Arabs, the Islamic Empire, attempts to siege Constantinople. They move in through Anatolia and attack Constantinople from the east. They also sail across the Aegean, land troops in the Balkans, and attempt to siege Constantinople from the west. And Constantinople probably would have fallen to the Arabs, and subsequently all of Europe probably would have fallen to the Arabs and the Muslims had it not been for the Bulgars. So at that time, around 717, Khan Asparukh has died, and his son Khan Tervel has taken control of the empire, of the Bulgarian Empire. And Khan Tervel manages to amass a massive Bulgarian force and strikes the Arabs from the rear. He moves his troops into the region of Thrace and hits the Arabs from the back as they're attempting to siege Constantinople, and destroys the Arab forces. Khan Tervel is actually known as the savior of Europe. He is given the title of Caesar by the Byzantines, which is a major honor. I don't think anyone previously to this time, any non-Roman, had been awarded the title of Caesar. So this is a major honor that the Byzantines bestow on the Bulgars. And again, this is an example of friendly cooperations between the Bulgars and the Byzantines. Now, there are hostile relationships as well between the two groups. If we fast forward a little bit into the early 9th century, around the year 811, we see an example of a very hostile relationship between these two empires. So in the early 9th century, the Bulgars are under the rule of Khan Krum. Khan Krum, a very important, I should say, Bulgar ruler. He manages to expand Bulgar territory quite extensively. He pushes the Bulgarian border to the northwest. Basically, he conquers Transylvania and all the way to modern-day Belgrade, modern-day Budapest. Quite heavy expansions of the Bulgar Empire in that direction. Also, the Bulgars expand to the southwest, taking the modern cities of Plovdiv and Sofia. So Khan Krum is instrumental in this expansion of the Bulgar Empire. And the Byzantine response to this is hostile. Obviously, the Byzantines are getting quite nervous around this time, around the early 9th century, with this Bulgar state expanding rapidly, becoming very powerful, and making incursions into territories that the Byzantines feel is theirs, especially around the regions of Plovdiv and Sofia. So what occurs in the year 811 is the Byzantines, under the command of Emperor Nikephoros, form an army, a massive military force in Constantinople, and march toward Pliska, the Bulgar capital. And their goal is to just completely crush the Bulgars so they don't have to worry about this massive state on their borders that is expanding and becoming very, very powerful. So, again, the year is 811, and Nikephoros, the emperor of Rome, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, is making his way towards Pliska. Now, Khan Krum sees this force and recognizes that he does not have the capabilities to defend, he does not have the capabilities to defend Pliska from this massive Byzantine army. So what Khan Krum does is he takes his military and he abandons the city, basically, and hides up in the mountains temporarily. So Nikephoros reaches Pliska. Pliska is undefended, and the city is devastated. They raid the city, they burn it to the ground, they steal all the valuables, and they're quite happy with themselves. Nikephoros is quite confident at this point, and he turns his attention to the southwest to attempt to retake his lost territories. Basically, he's marching towards the city of Sofia. It was called Serdica at the time, but it's modern day Sofia. So the Byzantine army now is marching towards these Bulgar territories in Plovdiv and Sofia, and they're quite disorganized on their march from Pliska to Sofia. Basically, they feel like they've destroyed the Bulgars. They're not expecting any resistance, and they're getting quite sloppy. Their formation that they're marching down kind of breaks up. Some soldiers desert. Some soldiers break off from the main columns and start raiding these Slavic and Bulgar villages, killing, raping, stealing, taking livestock. They're also getting very, very drunk. I should say, when they took Pliska, they managed to steal a large quantity of wine that the Bulgars had stored in Pliska. So they're getting very, very drunk along the way. And what they're not aware of, what Nikephoros is not aware of, is that Khan Krum is monitoring their march. He's essentially following them from up in the mountains and waiting for the right time to ambush them. So as the Byzantines are kind of drunkenly raiding these Slavic and Bulgar villages, making their way towards Sofia, Krum is sending emissaries out to the Slavic chieftains, informing them of what happened and asking for their reinforcements. So the Slavic chiefs oblige Krum's request and send soldiers to reinforce Krum's army. Basically, they joined forces with Krum, and Krum is now waiting for the right period of time to strike. And one particular period of time, one day, the Byzantines are drunker and more disorganized than usual, and Krum sees this as a perfect opportunity to strike. So on that day, Krum comes down from the mountains at the head of a pretty significant Bulgar Slavic force and slaughters the Byzantine forces. They are not expecting this whatsoever. They're completely disunified, disorganized, and it's basically like a horror show. They slaughter them down to the last man. In fact, Nikephoros, the emperor himself, is killed. It's the first time in 500 years that a Roman emperor has been killed in battle. So it's quite humiliating for the Byzantines. In fact, what is even more humiliating is Khan Krum chops off Nikephoros' head and places it on a pike. And Khan Krum rides back to Pliska with the Roman emperor's head on top of a pike, and he rides into the city, again, with the Roman emperor's severed head. What Khan Krum does at that point to further humiliate the Byzantines is he cleans the head, he cleans the skull of the flesh and the brains, and he lines the skull with silver, and him and the Slavic chieftains drink wine from Nikephoros' skull. So this is a humiliation, being an insult to injury being added by Khan Krum. So again, this is an example of hostile relations between the Bulgars and the Byzantines. So you can see the relationship between the two groups is quite complicated. But nevertheless, the Bulgars, after Krum being successful, expand even further, and subsequent Khans such as Omertag and Presian push further into Byzantine territory and conquer Macedonia in the early to mid 9th century. Around the year 850, Macedonia finds itself under Bulgar rule. And that's where I'm going to stop the video today. In the next video, we're going to talk about the Bulgar ruler Boris I and his Christianization of the empire and of the Macedonian Slavs. So until then, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.